I used to think solitude was something you could master like hiking or painting, a skill you practice until the silence stopped echoing back at you. But up here in the Willamette National Forest, 60 feet above the trees, I've learned that silence isn't empty. It's a space where something else might be listening. My name's Luke Marin, and I'm a seasonal fire lookout. I was stationed in Tower 16, an old structure built on the edge of Cougar Ridge. From my window, I could see the tree canopy roll like green ocean waves across the valley. Beautiful if you're into untouched wilderness. Beautiful if you're not afraid of being truly alone. I wasn't always here alone. 2 months ago, I shared radio chatter and late night check-ins with another lookout, Ellie Carter. We did our training together, logged weather reports, swapped stories about weird animal calls. Eli was the kind of guy who thrived in silence, said the forest reminded him of the womb. Dark, warm, and safe. I never understood that. Safe wasn't a word I'd use for endless pine and no cell signal. When the Forest Service assigned him to a newer post about 40 miles northeast, something changed. We still talked on the radio, but his voice became flatter, less grounded. I figured he was just adjusting to the isolation. I told myself I would too. The first week alone, I started hearing things at night. It always started around 1:30, a low warble, like a whale call dragged through gravel. Too deep to be a coyote, too drawn out to be an elk. Sometimes it came with clicks or moaning undertones, like several things trying to speak at once. I logged it as environmental noise, like I was trained. Unidentified wildlife activity, north by northwest quadrant. But the sound didn't match any known species, and it always came from the same direction, the gulch behind Tower 16, where the trail cuts off and nothing but untamed woods remain. I didn't sleep that week. I started keeping the lights off to save power, sitting in the dark with my weather instruments and coffee. I convinced myself the noises were just the forest breathing, at least until the 4th night. That's when I heard it. A voice, a human voice, a woman's voice, soft and hoarse, floating just beneath the warbling. Help me, just that, over and over, faint but deliberate. I froze. I didn't even breathe. My first thought, hiker in distress, but no one had checked in at the trailhead in days, and dispatch hadn't flagged any overdue campers. I called Eli over the radio. "Tower 9 here," he said after a long pause. "You hearing voices again?" "Again?" I asked. He hesitated. "Thought I was losing my mind last week. Heard someone crying. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't want to get flagged." There was silence between us, long and cold. "You don't think it's a person?" I finally asked. He replied too quickly. "No." I stayed up the rest of the night, staring into the forest with my spotlight. I never saw anyone. The next night, I put on my boots and hiked a 1/4 mile toward the gulch, just to prove to myself it was empty. The forest was still. Even the insects seemed to be holding their breath. That's when I heard the sound again. Not the voice, something worse. A long, wet clicking noise, like a throat clearing underwater. It wasn't behind me or ahead, it was all around me. I turned in a slow circle, scanning with my flashlight, and then I saw it. Something was standing far down the trail, barely visible between 2 trees. It didn't move, just stood there, too tall to be a person, lanky, wrong. I couldn't see its face, but the shape of it was humanoid, and somehow not. I backed up slowly until I was out of the forest and sprinting back up the tower's depths. My legs didn't stop shaking for an hour. Eli didn't answer his radio that night. By sunrise, my nerves were fried. I'd barely slept. The coffee didn't help, it only made the tremor in my hand worse. I sat by the observation window with binoculars, scanning the tree line where I'd seen that thing the night before. Nothing, just the usual canopy, shivering a little under the morning wind. Blue jays flitted between the branches. A hawk circled once overhead and disappeared behind the ridge. The forest was alive. Sure, but not the way it had been the night before. I didn't bother calling Eli again until after lunch. When he finally answered, his voice was gravel. "You saw it, didn't you?" he said. There was no preamble, no greeting. "I saw something," I admitted. "I don't know what." "That's how it starts," he replied. "They let you see just enough to keep you looking." I didn't know what to say to that. I wanted to write him off as sleep deprived, paranoid, but Eli wasn't the kind of guy to scare easily. "You didn't report it?" I asked. "To who?" he snapped. "Dispatch would ground me. You know how they operate. One mention of hallucinations, and they'll haul you out for psych evaluation." He wasn't wrong. The fire lookout program was strict about mental stability. Too many nights alone up here, and they start worrying. You'll jump from the tower, or worse, start a fire yourself just to see another human face. Besides, Eli continued, what would I even tell them? That a shadow with arms longer than its legs is watching me from the clearing every night? That it doesn't blink, doesn't breathe? He paused. I could hear the wind hissing through his open hatch. I stopped shining my light at it, he whispered. "I think it likes attention." I got chills. For the rest of that afternoon, I kept the blinds half closed and logged my weather data like a good employee. But every now and then, I catch myself staring out the west-facing window, toward the gulch. That night, I left the lights off completely, sat in the dark with my coffee and my radio, volume turned low. Around 1, right into it started again, but not the whale call this time. Voices, dozens of them, layered over each other like a nightmare chorus. Some high-pitched and childlike, others deep and gurgling. A few sounded like they were trying to speak English, repeating words out of order. "Don't go. In the hollow is ice. I found Father." Hollow. Scream. That one word stuck with me. Hollow. I grabbed my field recorder and pressed it to the mesh screen of the window, trying to capture the sound. But as soon as I hit record, everything stopped. The forest went dead silent. No wind, no insects, not even tree creaks. I waited, and that's when something stepped onto the catwalk outside the tower. Not climbed. Stepped like it was already up there. The boards creaked right outside the south-facing door. 1, 2, 3 steps. Heavy. Measured. I stayed absolutely still. My mouth was dry. Heart banging against my ribs. The doorknob rattled. Just once. Then silence. I stood frozen for minutes, maybe longer. I don't know how I finally found the courage to move, but I grabbed the fire axe from the wall, holding it like a baseball bat, and crept to the door. I flipped the bolt lock down. Even though it was probably too late, there were scratches on the outside of the metal door, deep, parallel grooves, like someone or something had dragged nails across it. I didn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, I reported an attempted break-in. Dispatch just laughed, said it was probably a raccoon or a bear, maybe even one of the mountain lions that sometimes wander close during mating season. I didn't argue. What was the point? When I finally got Eli back on the line that evening, he sounded worse than the day before. "I saw it again," he said. "Closer this time. It stood right at the base of the tower, just looking up, its head tilted sideways like a broken doll, mouth open. It never closed its mouth." "Luke, you said you didn't shine your light on it." "I didn't," he replied. "It didn't need light. It sees in the dark." His voice cracked. I think it's learning." That word shook me. Learning. That meant it wasn't just lurking. It was adapting, watching, picking up patterns. That night, I unplugged all external lights, turned off the radio, and sat cross-legged on the floor with the axe across my lap. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want it to know I was even there. But around 2, I heard a new sound. Not voices, not footsteps, a knock. 3 soft, rhythmic knocks on the wooden frame below my feet, coming from the hatch at the base of the tower ladder, followed by a voice. A woman's again. I'm lost. Please, help me. It was the same exact tone I had heard in the woods 3 nights earlier. The same voice, no variation, no distress. Just a line, repeated like a recording. I didn't move. The knocking stopped, and then I kid you not, the voice whispered again, this time closer. You can see me now. I turned, and through the glass of the western window, about 30 feet into the trees, I saw the same tall figure I had spotted before, still, staring, its mouth hung open, not screaming, just wide, like it had forgotten how to close. I didn't open the hatch that night. I didn't sleep either. I stayed frozen on the floor until dawn bled across the ridge, the soft glow of morning finally pushing the shadows back where they belonged. Or at least, I told myself they did. The thing in the woods, it didn't move. Not all night. Just stood there, a black slash against the gray-green forest, watching. When the first bird chirped and the squirrels resumed their rustling below, it was gone. No footsteps, no fading figure, just vanished. I didn't report it, not anymore. What was I going to say? Hey, dispatch. I've got some kind of mimic with a mouth that won't close stalking my tower. They'd send a ranger? Sure, and maybe a psych evaluation team right behind him. So instead, I called Eli. He answered immediately this time. No delay, no static. His voice was low and clipped. I tried to talk to it. He said, my gut sank. You what? It came up to the bottom of the ladder, didn't climb, just stood there looking up. So I said, what do you want? I was already shaking my head, pacing the catwalk. Jesus, Ellie. And it repeated me, same voice, my voice. He paused, breathing shallow into the mic. Luke, it sounded like me, down to the breath, the throat clearing tick I have. It didn't just mimic the words, it wore them. A long silence stretched between us, the only sound my boots against the wood. Then it laughed. Eli whispered, like it found something funny. My chest tightened. That's not the weird part. He added. I stopped pacing. There's more. It bled, he said. I waited, unsure what to say. From the mouth, like, not normal blood either. Dark, sticky. It didn't drip. It hung there like oil. It smiled while it bled. I wanted to tell him to get the hell out of there. But where would he go? He was 40 miles northeast. The nearest trailhead still hours away on foot, and the tower was only accessible by a service truck or helicopter. I gripped the radio. We need to report this. Both of us. At least make sure someone knows what's out here. I can't, he said quietly. I don't think it would like that. That chilled me more than anything else, because it meant Eli had already started thinking about what it wanted. That night, I locked every latch on the tower, covered the windows, and powered down all non-essentials. I sat in the dark again, axe in hand, pulse in my ears. At one, think I say something. I heard the voice again. Same line. I'm lost. Please help me. This time it came from the roof. I froze. No footsteps, no ladder creaks, just a voice. Directly above me, I stared up at the ceiling like it might cave in. My mouth was dry. I thought I could hear faint breathing, wet and raspy, like something dying slowly, but I couldn't be sure if it was real or just my mind breaking. I didn't move. 5 minutes passed. Then the voice came again, this time from the eastern wall. You're awake. Good. That was new. It knew. I lunged for the radio. Ellie, come in. You there? Silence. I tried again. Tower 9. This is Tower 16. Do you copy? A crackle. Then his voice came through. But something was wrong. It was faint. Like he was far away or under something. Don't come out. It's learning us. Then silence again. No static. No cutout. Just gone. I gripped the mic tighter. Ellie? Say again. What do you mean it's learning us? Nothing. I didn't hear from him again that night. The morning brought thick fog. rolling in from the west like a slow-motion avalanche. Visibility dropped to about 10 feet. I could barely see the treetops from the tower. At 9, Jaseja M. Dispatch radioed. Tower 9, not responding. Can you reach out directly? Tower 16. I stared at the mic. My hand hovered, then dropped. I lied. No contact yet. Maybe he's doing tower maintenance. The dispatcher made a note and moved on. I tried Eli again after they signed off. Nothing. I started checking the forest with my binoculars every half hour. Still nothing. The fog lingered all day, never fully breaking. Around 4 p.m. I saw a shape in the mist, too small to be the figure from the nights before. I zoomed in. It was a deer, or it looked like a deer, but it was walking wrong. Its limbs moved like they didn't belong to it, stiff and mechanical, its head tilted sideways, just like Eli had said about the figure. Its jaw hung open, blood new, that same black oil dribbling from its mouth. It stopped, turned to face me, and I swear to God it smiled, not like a real smile, like something had seen one before and was trying to do it, trying too hard. The teeth didn't match the shape of the mouth. It stared up at me for a full minute, then walked back into the fog, never breaking its slow, deliberate rhythm. That night, the wind kicked up. A storm was coming. The old tower groaned and creaked like an old ship on rough seas. I bolted the door, dragged the dresser in front of it, and sat with my back to the wall. Around 2 a.m., the tower shook. The whole damn thing swayed like something huge had bumped the ladder, and the voice came again, clearer than ever. Luke, let me in. It's cold. But it wasn't Eli's voice. It was mine. I didn't answer it. I didn't move. I just pressed my back against the wall and listened as my own voice, perfectly mimicked, kept calling from outside the tower. Luke, let me in. It's cold. The wind howled harder, battering the windows. Rain pelted the tower like gravel. The structure swayed, old beams groaning in protest. The imitation voice repeated the line again, slower this time, stretching the words like taffy. Luke, let me in. Then it stopped. Silence, except for the storm. My mind spun through every explanation, auditory hallucination, and prank. But how could anyone get up here, alone, at 2 a.m, in a thunderstorm, and mimic my voice perfectly? It couldn't. That thing out there, it was something else. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Not with the wind rattling the glass, and that silence pressing in after the voice stopped. I just sat there in the dark, eyes locked on the door, axe in my lap, waiting for the next knock. It never came. By dawn, the storm had backed off a bit. The radio hissed back to life, the signal stronger now. I tried Eli again. Tower 9, do you copy? Static. I clicked again. Eli, come in. Are you safe? A pause. Then, not anymore. The voice was soft, tired, hollow. I saw it last night. He continued. It climbed halfway up the ladder, just stood there, didn't try to break in, just stared at me through the slats. He paused. I could hear something dripping in the background. Then it spoke. He whispered. It said, "You left the door open once." Chills rippled across my skin. "Did you?" I asked. He didn't respond. "Eli, I think it's already been inside," he said, voice cracking. I just didn't notice. Then the radio cut out. That was the last time I spoke to him. By noon, dispatch was trying again too. No contact with Tower 9. They asked me to hike out if the trail was passable and check in. Said the nearest team wouldn't arrive until tomorrow due to fallen trees and washed out roads. I told them I'd try, but I knew I wasn't going anywhere near Tower 9. Instead, I pulled up the binoculars and scanned the horizon toward Eli's post. Through the haze, I spotted something, his tower silhouetted against the cloudy sky, just barely visible. Something was wrong with it. The shape looked off, like it was leaning slightly, and there was something else. Movement. Something dark moving around the top platform. I adjusted the focus and froze. There was a figure climbing the outside of the tower, not up the ladder around the outside frame, its limbs too long, wrapped unnaturally around the railings like a spider. It was dragging itself toward a hatch on the roof, and then I saw Eli. He was on the catwalk, staring down, pale as bone, lips parted in silent terror. He didn't move. He didn't scream. He just watched as the thing climbed toward him. Then the fog rolled in again, and everything vanished. I called for him over and over that night. Nothing. Around midnight, the wind picked up again. A second storm rolled through, even worse than the last. Lightning cracked across the valley. Thunder rattled the metal frame of the tower, and just past 2A, the radio clicked back on. Only it wasn't Eli this time. Luke. It said, my voice again, distorted now, slurred. You didn't help him. Then it laughed, a slow, wet, gurgling laugh that made bile rise in my throat. I yanked the radio battery out and threw the whole unit across the floor. It shattered. That was the last time I heard my own voice over the radio. At 5 a.m., dispatch sent a chopper to Tower 9. I watched from the catwalk with my binoculars as it hovered over the site. Through the early morning haze, I saw the team rappel down. They entered the tower, stayed for maybe 20 minutes, then radioed back. Eli was gone. No signs of a struggle. No blood. No prints. Just a series of deep scratches inside the hatch and a strange, terror-like residue around the ladder. The official report, voluntary disappearance. They said Eli must have wandered off during the storm and gotten lost. Search teams were mobilized, but I knew they wouldn't find him. Not really. He didn't wander off. He was taken. I knew it in my gut. That night, I packed my gear and waited until sunrise. I told dispatch I was feeling sick, maybe a fever, maybe food poisoning, enough to get rotated out. They didn't ask questions. They just said a truck would come for me the next morning. And as I waited through that last night, I saw the figure again. This time it stood in the middle of the clearing, completely exposed, head tilted, arms limp at its sides, watching me. And beside it, God help me, was another shape, shorter, same posture, same tilt. I couldn't make out the face, but I recognized the frame. It was Eli, or what was left of him. The forest didn't feel real when I walked out the next morning. It felt like I was sleepwalking through a memory someone else had made. Familiar trees, familiar path, but none of it looked the same. The colors were drained, the air heavy, like I was moving underwater. The service truck met me half a mile from Tower 16. A guy named Blake was behind the wheel, young, chatty, oblivious. His uniform was pressed, his boots clean. He asked if I wanted a granola bar, told me I looked pale, said I'd probably just caught the flu going around Bend. I nodded and said thanks, but I wasn't sick. Not in the way he meant. As the truck bounced down the forest road, I looked back at the ridge line. Tower 16 was just barely visible above the trees. For a second, I thought I saw a figure standing on the catwalk, arms too long, mouth hanging open, but the truck turned, and the trees just swallowed it. I didn't speak the rest of the ride. Back in town, they ran the usual checks, temp, hydration, BP, everything normal. They told me to take a week off and then report back for reassignment. I nodded. I lied. I had no intention of ever going back into those woods. I didn't sleep that first night home, or the second, or the third, because every night at 2, Zartrio, I heard knocking at the window, the wall, sometimes the ceiling. 3 knocks, always 3, soft, measured, passion. I lived in a second-floor apartment. By the 5th night, I snapped. I ran outside barefoot with a flashlight and a kitchen knife, shining it into the trees behind the complex. Nothing, no people, no animals, no footprints. But when I came back in, there were scratches on the inside of my front door. Not deep, not violent, just deliberate, 3 vertical lines. I left the next day and drove south, as far as I could. No plan in mind. I ended up in Klamath Falls, booked a room at a motel that didn't ask questions, and turned off my phone. I stayed there for a week. Curtains drawn, lights off at night. It didn't help. On the 7th night, I woke up gasping, heart hammering, drenched in sweat. There was something in the room with me. Not noise, not movement, just presence. I could feel it, and then I heard it whispered from the corner by the closet. Let me in. Luke. I didn't answer. I didn't breathe. The closet door creaked open an inch. I bolted out of the room barefoot, ran across the parking lot, and didn't stop until I hit the 7-Eleven on the next block. I stood under the fluorescent lights until dawn, hands shaking, employees staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. I went back to Portland after that, moved in with my sister, told her I just needed to get out of town. She didn't ask questions. I didn't offer answers. Weeks passed. The knocks stopped. I started to believe I had imagined it all. Sleep deprivation, isolation psychosis. I read about it, how people who spend long enough alone in nature start inventing patterns, hearing voices, seeing shadows. I clung to that idea like a life raft until last week. I saw a listing online. Fire lookout needed. Immediate hire. Willamette National Forest. Tower 9. Eli's post. They hadn't removed it. They were looking for a replacement. And in the comments buried in the thread beneath the job posting, I saw a message. Just one. No profile picture. No account name. It read, "Don't leave the door open." I stared at that message for an hour. Don't leave the door open. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. It was the exact phrase Eli had heard the night before he disappeared, repeated back to him by that thing climbing the tower. The same sentence I had replayed in my head 1,000 times since. I didn't sleep that night. I kept refreshing the job listing every few hours, half hoping it would vanish, get pulled down by someone who knew better. But it stayed, right there in plain view. 2 days later, someone commented again. Just got hired, headed out next week. Can't wait to be off grid. His name was Ryan. I tried to reach out. I messaged him through the forum. Told him I'd worked in Willamette and that I had serious concerns about Tower 9, that he should request a different post. Anywhere but there. He replied once. Appreciate it, man. But I've been looking forward to this for years. I'll be fine. I've done wilderness survival. I like the quiet. That was the same thing Eli said. I tried calling the Forest Service. Left a message for a supervisor. I said I had safety concerns about a specific tower, old structural damage, possible wildlife threats, strange environmental activity. I didn't mention voices or shapes in the trees. Just hinted at unsafe patterns. No one called back. I gave up. I watched the days pass. Watched the clouds change above my sister's porch. Watched the job listing disappear after a week marked as filled. And then, on a Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Is this Luke? I froze. Yeah. I typed back. Who is this? There was a pause. Then, I found your name on the back of the Tower 9 radio, scratched into the metal. Did you work here? It was Ryan. My pulse jumped. Yes. Are you okay? A long delay. Then, I've been hearing things at night. Voices. A woman asking for help. I swallowed hard. Leave. I replied. Now. Walk down the ridge. Hike out. Whatever you have to do. Just leave. Another delay. They told me not to use the radio unless it's urgent. I wasn't sure if this counted. It does, I said. It absolutely does. I waited. 3 hours passed with no reply. I tried calling the number, straight to voicemail. That night, I sat awake on the living room couch, watching the front door like I was back in the tower. The city lights outside the window flickered with every passing car, but I wasn't looking at the road. I was looking at the trees beyond the street. Every few minutes, I thought I saw movement between the branches, a tall shape, mouth hanging open. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed again. It climbed up to the hatch tonight. No greeting, no punctuation, just dread. I responded. "Did you see its face?" Ryan replied. "I think it used to be someone else. It knows my name now." And then nothing. I didn't hear from him again for 2 full days. I started searching online Reddit threads, Forest Service forums, anything. I found old posts talking about Tower 9. Most were harmless, but every now and then, buried deep in the archives, I found a line that made my skin crawl. One from 2012. Heard a woman crying near the gulch. Didn't see her. Hope she found help. One from 2004. Knock on the hatch around 3 a.m. No one there. Scared me good. Funny story. And one from 1996, just one sentence. If you hear yourself talking from outside, don't answer. These weren't new events. They'd been happening for decades, and no one had done a damn thing. On the 3rd night, Ryan messaged again. "It's inside." I dropped my phone, fumbled to pick it back up, fingers shaking. "How? Did you leave the hatch open?" His reply, "I didn't, but I dreamed I did." Woke up, door was unlocked. It was smiling. I called the number immediately. No answer. I don't know what happened after that. No updates, no more messages. Just silence. 3 days later, the Forest Service posted a new job listing. Fire lookout needed. Willamette National Forest. Tower 9. Position open. And I realized the truth. They know. They always have. They just keep refilling the seat. There's something most people don't understand about fear. It doesn't always scream. It doesn't always lunge from the shadows or rattle your doorknob at midnight. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle. It slips into your routine and curls up in the corner of your living room like it's always belonged there. I stopped sleeping, not because I was scared of nightmares, because I was scared of not waking up from one. I moved out of my sister's house a week after Ryan's last message. I told her I needed space, that I was looking for a new job in Eugene. She nodded, but I saw the concern in her eyes. I'd lost weight. I'd started mumbling to myself without noticing. Once, she caught me just standing in the hallway at 2 a.m., staring at the front door. I found a sublet downtown, 4th floor, no woods in sight, traffic humming all night. Noise was a comfort now. The city didn't care what watched you through your window. I thought maybe I could leave it all behind. I was wrong. It started again on the 11th night. 3 knocks, not loud, barely audible over the hum of the fridge. I turned off every appliance, waited. There it was again. 3 soft knocks, coming from inside the closet. I grabbed the bat I kept by the couch and yanked the door open. Empty. Of course it was. But behind the row of jackets, there were 3 faint scratches on the drywall. Vertical, evenly spaced, like the marks on my fire tower door. The next day, I bought salt. I don't know why. Maybe I'd read it in some form. Maybe I just needed something to do. I poured a line of it across every window and door, like some suburban exorcism ritual. I stopped opening the blinds. I unplugged the TV. I deleted every trail app from my phone, but the knocking didn't stop. Every night at exactly 2:03. Sometimes from the closet, sometimes the ceiling, sometimes from the inside of the bathroom mirror. I started hearing voices again. 2, not in the woods this time, in my own voicemail. I'd get alerts, play the message, and hear a static-filled version of my voice saying things I didn't remember saying. "You never left the tower. They just think you did. Look outside." I stopped checking my phone after that. I called the Forest Service just once to ask about Ryan. The woman on the line sounded polite, robotic. She told me Tower 9 had no record of a lookout named Ryan assigned in the past year. I told her I had proof. Messages, photos. She went silent for a moment. Then she said, "Sir, you're the only one listed for Tower 9 this season." I hung up. I didn't leave the apartment for 3 days after that. When I finally did, it was just to walk, no destination, just motion. I passed a bookstore on Hawthorne and ducked inside to avoid eye contact with a man who looked too familiar. Same lanky frame, same slow tilt of the head. I spent an hour in the back corner of that shop, pretending to read. That's where I saw it. A used nature guide on one of the bottom shelves. Weathered cover, faded title, Lookouts of Willamette, a Forest Service retrospective. I flipped through it, old photos, maps, a list of towers some long since decommissioned. When I reached the page for Tower 9, I froze. There was a photo, black and white, probably from the late 60s. A man standing on the catwalk, waving to the camera, and beside him a dark shape. At first, I thought it was a shadow, but no, the angle was wrong. It was a person or something close leaning just behind the man, mouth open, no eyes. Someone had written a note under the photo in pencil, long since smudged. It lives here. I bought the book. I didn't care that the clerk looked at me like I was nuts. That night, the knocking came again, but this time I didn't freeze. I stood in the center of the apartment and said, "What do you want from me?" There was a long pause. Then, from the walls, my voice echoed back, "Someone to watch." The next morning, I drove to the Central Library. I didn't know what I was looking for, just that I needed proof. Something to prove I wasn't insane, that Tower 9 had a history, that this thing didn't just start with Eli or me. I wanted to know how far back it went. I dug through old fire service directories, ranger newsletters, newspaper clippings on microfilm. Most of it was boring budget concerns, wildfire updates, forest trail closures. But then I found something in a 1991 back issue of the Eugene Sentinel. Local fire lookout missing after storm. Search continues for Chris Dorman. He was assigned to Tower 9. The article said the storm knocked out radio contact. By the time a team reached the tower, it was empty. No signs of violence, no gear missing, just gone, vanished. The search lasted 4 days before it was called off. There was no follow-up article, no obituary, not even a public statement from the Forest Service. Like he never existed. I wrote his name down on a napkin. Chris Dorman, 1991. I kept digging. Frankie Monroe disappeared from Tower 9. Same story. Sudden radio silence after a storm. Tower found empty. Catherine Wood vanished during her second solo season. James Pelton never found. I wrote each name down. There were 12 over the last 50 years, all from one tower, and yet Tower 9 was still in use. I confronted a retired ranger who used to supervise Willamette stations. Found his number buried in a forum post and called him out of the blue. His name was Walter Keene. Old voice. "Wary, who told you about Tower 9? He asked. I told him I worked there, that I knew something was wrong. He was quiet a long time. Then he said, "We don't talk about 9. I pressed him. He sighed. "It's been there too long. That's what I always believed. The forest takes things back if you build on ground that doesn't want to be touched." "What is it?" I asked. "What's out there?" He didn't answer that, but he did say this. "There are places the sun doesn't fully reach. Places where sound doesn't behave the way it should. Tower 9 was built in one of those places." He hung up before I could ask anything else. That night, I laid the names out on the floor of my apartment. 12 disappearances. Always during a storm. Always after reports of voices. Sightings, unexplained phenomena, and in every case, the Forest Service just moved on. Filled the position, covered it with paperwork and protocol. I took a photo of the list, sent it to myself, then printed a copy and mailed it physically. Mailed it to the Portland Press, marked anonymous tip. I didn't expect anything to come of it, but it helped me feel sane. I slept for 4 hours that night, the first sleep I'd had in weeks, until the knocking woke me up again. 2, Zerthria. This time it wasn't coming from the closet, it was coming from the window. I live on the 4th floor. I told myself not to look, but I did. And pressed against the glass was a face. Not pressed like a person trying to see, and pressed like something stuck between this side and something else. Between places. Its skin was waxy, stretched, teeth too visible through a split lip that didn't bleed. It smiled. Then it mouthed my name. I fell backward over the couch, scrambling like a child. When I looked again, it was gone. Just condensation on the window pane. I didn't sleep after that. I started seeing things during the day too. A man on the bus with no eyes. A child at the grocery store speaking in Eli's voice. My own reflection not quite matching my movements. One afternoon, while walking home, I passed a telephone pole covered in missing person flyers. Most were recent, but one near the bottom caught my eye. A young woman in ranger uniform, smiling, one hand raised in a wave. Missing since July 1975, Catherine Wood. Willamette Fire Lookout. Someone had drawn a red X across the flyer. Below it, handwritten in marker, she came back wrong. The package arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon. No return address, no stamps, just a plain, weather-stained cardboard box sitting outside my apartment door. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a neighbor's, but the label said my name. Handwritten in shaky letters, Luke Marin, APT 4B. I brought it inside like it might explode. Inside, a single object, wrapped in a layer of faded newspaper and duct tape. A cassette tape, old school. No markings, no label, just a black Maxell 60-minute tape, scuffed and slightly warped. There was also a note, folded in yellow ink, written in the same trembling hand as the label. It said, "Play this when the knocking gets louder, and don't listen all the way through. C. Catherine Wood." One of the names from my list. One of the missing. I just stared at it for a long time. My hands were sweating. The tape felt warm, wrong, like it had a pulse. I didn't have a player. I drove around for hours trying to find one pawn shops, thrift stores, even an old record store off MLK BLVD that mostly sold vintage typewriters and Polaroids. The guy behind the counter finally dug up a battered tape deck with a busted speaker, but it still played. Back at the apartment, I sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the deck like it might bite me. The knocking hadn't started yet, but I pressed play anyway. The tape hissed. For the first 30 seconds, there was nothing but static. Then a voice, female, weak, whispering, "This is Catherine Wood, Tower 9. I don't know how long I've been gone, but if you're hearing this, you need to listen, 'cause it listens too." I felt my whole body tense. She continued, "It starts with the voice. That's the hook. But it's not what it seems. The voice isn't trying to call you. It's trying to learn you. Your patterns, your words, your fear." A pause. "It's not a creature. It's not a ghost. It's the place. Tower 9 isn't built on soil. It's built on a wound. And whatever bled there never stopped bleeding. The hairs on my arms rose up. You can't kill it. You can't trap it, but you can confuse it." The audio crackled violently here, like something thrashed against the tape itself. Then her voice returned urgent now. "If it starts mimicking people, don't speak. Don't respond. Don't let it learn your rhythm. It feeds on familiarity." She started crying. "I made that mistake. I thought it was my brother. I talked to it, and now I don't remember his real voice anymore. Just its." I reached for the pause button, but just before I pressed it, she said something that froze me cold. "It followed me. It follows anyone who leaves the tower. It's in the blood now. It watches through eyes that aren't yours." Click. I stopped the tape. The silence in my apartment felt radioactive, like something was pressing in through the walls. That night, I didn't sleep. At 2:03, the knocking returned. But this time, it was faster. Not 3 taps. 6, then 9. Then a long dragging sound, like fingernails across drywall. It wasn't coming from the window or closet. It was coming from everywhere. Walls, floor, pipes. The knocking wasn't knocking anymore. It was rhythmic. It patterned like code, like someone trying to tap a message into the foundation of my building. I curled up on the couch and shoved headphones over my ears. White noise, loud, relentless. Even through it, I thought I heard my name. I went back to the tape the next morning. I needed to hear more. Maybe Catherine left instructions. Maybe she found a way to end this. I fast forwarded a few minutes, hit play, and the first thing I heard was my own voice. This is Luke Marin, Tower 16. I don't know how long I've been back. I stopped the tape, stared at it. How the hell was that possible? I hadn't recorded anything. I hadn't said anything into a radio since I left the woods. I'd never met Catherine, never mailed a tape, never even heard my voice recorded before now. But it was me, panicked, broken, repeating the exact words I'd said to myself 2 nights ago while pacing the apartment. That's when I realized it wasn't a recording. It was listening, and it was replaying me. There's a point where fear stops being sharp, stops being a blade pressed to your skin. It dulls, seeps, becomes a part of the background. That's where I was. The moment I heard my own voice on that tape, words I had never recorded, I felt something change in me, like a small, quiet surrender, not to death, not to madness, but to something deeper. The idea that I was already being rewritten, that maybe I hadn't left the forest after all. That night, I covered every mirror in the apartment, blankets, towels, newspaper, anything. I didn't want to see myself or whatever had been wearing me. I started recording myself, constantly audio logs, videos, timestamp selfies, anything to create a breadcrumb trail in case I started slipping, in case I wasn't me anymore. And that's when I noticed it. In one of the videos, a clip I'd taken just the night before, I blinked, spoke, moved, but half a second too late. My reflection lagged, only by a moment, but enough to see, enough to know. It wasn't just mimicking me, it was practicing, trying to get it right. I threw my phone across the room and screamed until my voice broke. It wasn't safe anymore. Not inside, not outside, not in my own skin. The next morning, I found another note, not mailed, not slipped under the door. It was inside my fridge, scrawled in marker across a torn receipt from a gas station I hadn't visited in years. You're doing it wrong. It already knows your name. Give it someone else's. No signature. I sat on the floor, shaking. My head buzzed. My heartbeat was in my teeth. It made no sense. Or maybe it made too much sense. Give it someone else's name. What did that mean? Was that how it picked its prey? Recognition. Attention. Identity. Suddenly, Catherine's warning came flooding back. It feeds on familiarity. And then, a darker thought. Was this how it spread? You hear the voice. You respond. It learns you. It follows. Then, you tell someone else. Share the story. It learns them too. I needed to do something. Anything. I went back to the library and dug deeper. Buried in a 1972 Forest Service memo filed under infrastructure maintenance. Tower 9 was a single line that chilled me more than anything else so far. C. Wood reports auditory distortions. Recommends tower relocation. Denied. They knew. Even back then, I found more notes like it in archive maintenance logs. Multiple lookouts report same 2 a.m. phenomenon. Unusual synchronicity in missing persons cases. Staff transfer requests increasing pattern noticed. None of them acted. No tower was closed. No one ever pulled the plug. Because the Forest Service didn't believe it was supernatural. They thought it was psychological. The isolation, the dark, the paranoia. But they were wrong. It wasn't the solitude that was toxic. It was the land, the forest, something buried beneath Tower 9. Something that was waiting. I walked home in a daze. The sidewalks felt too narrow. The shadows too long. People's faces blurred as they passed me, and I found myself whispering my own name under my breath to hold on to it. Luke Marin, Luke Marin, Luke Marin. But what if that name wasn't even mine anymore? That night, I took all the mirrors down, stacked them in the hallway. I stared into one of them for a long time, just long enough to test the theory. I smiled. My reflection didn't. It just stared back at me. Its mouth hung open, too wide, and then, without moving its lips, it whispered, "We are watching." The next morning, I found the envelope. It was wedged inside the fire service guidebook I had brought home from the library weeks ago. The one about Willamette's lookout towers. I could have sworn I flipped through every page already. But now, here it was, tucked between chapters like it had always been there, just waiting for the right moment. It was thick, yellowed with age, sealed with a brittle piece of red tape on the front, in smudged block letters. Dorman Confidential, do not file. Chris Dorman, the name from 1991. One of the missing. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a folded letter, a series of Polaroids, and what looked like a hand-drawn map barely legible. Ink bled from years of moisture. I started with the letter. July 4th, 1991. Tower 9, Willamette. If anyone finds this, I'm leaving this as my last record. I've seen it. It's taken the others before me. Wood, Monroe, Pelton. They never made it out. I don't think I will either, but I found something. A pattern. It's not just watching. It's tethered, bound to the land, but not the tower. There's a clearing about a mile west of here, near where the ground sinks and no birds fly overhead. I think that's where it was born. Or fed. There are carvings in the stones. Old, not English. Something tells me the land was sealed, and the tower was built to break the seal. My skin crawled. I think I know how to sever it. I'm going to try, but it needs something alive. Something that's been marked, that's heard its voice. I've heard it every night. It knows me now. If I don't come back, don't try to find me. Burn this letter. Bury the rest. Chris Dorman. The Polaroids were faded. Blurry trees twisted at unnatural angles. Rock formations with symbols carved deep into them. And one, the last, was a photo of the clearing. A wide ring of dirt surrounded by trees that leaned away from the center. Like something in the soil was pushing them back. I traced the map next. It wasn't far from Tower 9. I recognized some of the same paths I'd hiked during my post at 16. The trails Dorman marked weren't on any Forest Service maps. These were old, maybe older than the tower itself. That night, the knocking didn't come at 2 or 3. It came at 1. Elevator. Then again at 1. When she do, each time louder, faster, more erratic, like it was angry. Like it knew I had found something it didn't want me to see. At 1, it went to sit up me. The cassette player still plugged into the wall, powered on by itself. I hadn't touched it in days. The speaker crackled. My own voice came through. "I'll trade you." Then a laugh. My laugh. I ripped the cord out of the wall and threw the player into the garbage chute. At 2, rodeo. Dead silence. Not a knock. Not a whisper. Nothing. Which was worse. I sat there the rest of the night. Dorman's letter clutched in my hand, repeating one line over and over. It needs something alive. I didn't know what he meant by sever. Was it a ritual? A death? A trap? But I knew this much. If it was tied to the forest, if the tower was built to keep feeding it, then someone had to go back, not to work the tower, to close the wound. The next morning, I packed a bag, flashlight, camera, compass, first aid kit, gasoline, matches, Dorman's map, and a knife. Not to fight it, to mark the end, if it came to that. Before I left, I opened my apartment window for the first time in days. The sun was low, traffic light, birds chirping. I thought about calling someone, leaving a message, but what would I say? Hey, if I don't come back, It's because I went to kill a mimic ghost entity tied to a fire lookout tower in the woods. They'd lock me up. Instead, I left a single note on the counter. Don't rebuild Tower 9. Don't fill the job. Let it rot. L.M. Then I got in my car and I drove back to Willamette. The drive back to Willamette felt like drifting into a dream you'd spent years trying to forget. I knew the turns by memory. The winding forest road, the dirt pull-off near Cougar Ridge, even the broken mile marker sign just before the boundary line half covered in moss, like the forest was slowly eating it. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. The moment I stepped out of the car, the air felt heavier, like I'd sunk into a pocket of pressure just beneath the skin of the world. No sound, no birds, not even wind through the trees, just the stillness. Watching, waiting, I followed Dorman's map. The path he had marked started behind a slope of pine and old, fire-blackened stumps. No trail signs, no human prints, just a narrow depression in the ground, as if something large had slithered through decades ago, and the forest never healed. It was about a mile, just like he said. The deeper I went, the more wrong it felt. The trees didn't sway, the needles didn't crunch, and the shadows, God, the shadows, they didn't fall where they should have. At one point, I passed between two twisted trunks, and I swear I saw my own silhouette move the other direction. Then, at the base of a dry ravine, I found it, the clearing, a perfect circle, maybe 30 feet across. No trees, no grass, just packed earth and ash, dark as bruises, as if the sun refused to touch it. Around the edge, ancient stones, 7 of them each carved with symbols that hurt to look at, curves that bent wrong, shapes that didn't belong in 3 dimensions. I stepped into the ring, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. At the center was a shallow hole, not dug, not carved, melted. The map had a note beside it in Doorman's handwriting. Center point, tether locus. I stood there, heart hammering, breathing hard. It wasn't fear anymore. It was recognition, like something beneath the surface knew me, was excited to see me again. I unslung my pack, pulled out the gasoline. Dorman's letter said nothing specific, just sever it. But I figured fire was as good a start as any. I poured a ring around the clearing, then doused the center. Then I took out the matches and hesitated. And that's when I heard it. Behind me, Luke. My throat closed. It was Eli's voice. I turned. Slowly, he was standing just beyond the stones, right where the tree line began. Pale, still wearing the Tower 9 jacket, one sleeve torn, mouth slightly open. He smiled, but his eyes, they weren't his. There was nothing behind them, just black, like the shape of something deep and hollow trying to pretend it belonged inside skin. You left me, he said. I didn't answer. You said you'd help. He took a step forward. The wind didn't touch him. His hair didn't move. I pulled the match. Don't, he said, voice going flat. We'll be alone again. He took another step, and something in his face rippled like the skin. Forgot what it was supposed to look like. One eye dipped lower, his mouth opened wider than it should have. Don't. Each repetition had a different voice, mine. Catherine's, my sister's, my mother's. I struck the match. The wind should have blown it out, but it didn't. The moment the flame touched the gasoline, the clearing exploded into heat and color and screaming. Not just one voice. Thousands. Wailing, roaring, pleading. I staggered back, shielding my face as fire raced around the circle. The trees caught. The stones cracked. The symbols bled. I dropped to my knees, ears ringing, stomach lurching, and through it all, one sound rose above the rest. A voice low, inhuman, like it had been buried for centuries and was finally free to stretch. We see you now. Then silence and black. When I woke up, it was morning. The clearing was ash. The stones were gone. No bodies, no figures, no voices, just me, alive, but not alone. I walked out of that forest with ash in my lungs and something heavier on my back, something I couldn't see or shake. I made it to the highway just after noon. A trucker picked me up near the mile marker, asked if I'd been in a fire. I told him it was a controlled burn gone wrong. He didn't press. I slept in the passenger seat with one eye open the whole ride back to Portland. At first, I thought it was over. The dream stopped. The knocking didn't follow me. My reflection moved in sync again. I started eating normal food, sleeping full nights. A week passed, then 2. Then I saw it. Not in the woods, not in a dream. In the city, on the Max platform at Pioneer Square. Just after dusk, a woman in a brown coat, standing perfectly still on the edge of the platform, head tilted, arms at her sides, mouth slightly parted. She didn't blink, didn't flinch when the train passed, didn't board. She just watched me. I thought it was a coincidence, a homeless woman, a drug case, a trick of light. But the next night, she was there again. Same coat, same posture, same face. And behind her, just for a second, I saw movement, a flicker of something tall and thin, a smear of shadow that didn't belong in a place with overhead lighting. I turned around, walked straight home, locked every door and window, burned the last page of Doorman's letter in my sink. I told myself it was PTSD. Then I got the first email. No subject, no sender. Heard the knocking. Tower 9. What do I do? That was it. I deleted it. The next day, another. She's outside my apartment. I didn't answer, but I think she knows I'm awake. By the 5th message, I stopped deleting them because they weren't random. They were all coming from people who had somehow read my notes, my posts, my trail journal that I'd uploaded to a private server and forgotten. Maybe it wasn't as private as I thought. Maybe it was never private. And now, others had seen it. Others had been learned. I spent the next week tracking every message, replying to a few, begging them not to talk to it, not to respond, not to say its name. One guy, Kevin from Reno, said he had heard his dog speak in his own voice. Another Jess from Calgary said her husband had started sleepwalking and whispering in languages he didn't speak. A teenager from Idaho sent me a voicemail. The audio file was just her crying, and in the background, my voice saying, "Let me in." I smashed my laptop. I disconnected from everything. I moved again, changed my name, started using cash only, tried to disappear. But then I started seeing the symbol, not in the forest here, in the city, scratched into a bathroom stall door at a rest stop, etched into the side of a lamppost, spray painted on an alley wall in northeast Portland, that same curling, impossible shape from the stones in the clearing. Doorman hadn't severed anything. I hadn't either. We didn't destroy it. We just unbound it. Tower 9 wasn't a prison, it was a plug. And when I lit that fire, I pulled it. I didn't stop it. I set it loose. There's a theory I read once that stories are the oldest form of contagion. Before germs, before viruses, it was ideas that spread. The more people who knew a story, the more real it became. And now, I finally understand what that meant. Because this thing, the one from the tower, from the forest, it doesn't hunt. Not in the traditional sense. It infects through words, through voice, through memory. That's why it mimics. That's why it repeats. That's why it needed me to speak. Every time I told someone about Tower 9, every time I described the clearing, or mentioned Eli, or warned them not to listen, it was like lighting a signal flare, like calling it closer. The fire didn't destroy it. It freed it, untethered it from one place. One body, one tower, but it still needs an anchor. It still needs to be recognized to take shape. And the more it's seen, the stronger it becomes. I think that's why it wanted me alive. Not to kill me, to use me, to spread. I figured all this out after I received a package at my new address. No return label, no postage. Inside was a photo, black and white, slightly blurred. Me, standing on the catwalk of Tower 16, but I didn't remember the picture being taken. In the photo, I'm waving, and behind me, just barely visible, is a second me, standing in the doorway of the tower. No expression, just watching. The back of the photo had a single word scratched into the paper. Soon, I burned the picture, but it didn't help, because that night, I had the dream. I was back in the clearing, but it wasn't burned. It was whole. The stones were untouched, and something was waiting at the center. Not moving, not breathing, just standing with its back to me, as if it had been waiting a long time. And when it turned, it had my face, but not quite right. The eyes were too wide, the teeth too small, like it had tried to recreate me from memory and gotten a few things wrong. It smiled and said, "Tell them, that's how we grow." I woke up screaming. The next morning, I packed everything I owned into a single bag and checked into a roadside motel under a fake name. And I started writing this because I think that's the only choice I have left. To trap it, to bind it to a story again, to contain it in words. That's what Tower 9 was all along. Not a lookout post, a story trap, a ritual, a warning, and now it's loose again. So I'm telling you everything I saw, everything I did, every rule I broke, because maybe if you know how it works, you can stop it from getting into you, or maybe not. Maybe just by reading this, by hearing your own name whispered at night, you've already invited it in. If you hear knocking, don't answer. If you hear a familiar voice calling from outside, don't look. And if you ever see a job posting for a fire lookout in Willamette National Forest, don't take it. I knew it would end this way. Not with a bang, not with fire, but with a whisper in the dark, asking to be let in. It's been 3 nights since I finished writing my account. I've stayed in a motel off I-5, far enough from the forest to pretend it can't reach me, but close enough to feel its pull. The room smells like old soap and cigarette ash. The blinds don't fully close. The TV doesn't work, but I keep the radio on. Not tuned to any station, just static. It helps drown out the other sounds. The knocking returned last night. Soft, gentle, long, not like before. Not angry, not rushed. Passion. I didn't check the door. Didn't look out the window. I already know what's there. It's me, or what's wearing me. I can feel it now, moving in the corners of my thoughts, pacing, smiling, whispering its favorite line. Tell them, that's its rule, its only law. Be seen, be heard, be remembered, 'cause that's how it spreads. Through the story, through you, and it's getting smarter. The others, Catherine, Dorman, even Eli, they all tried to stop it, but they only delayed it. Gave it more names to learn, more voices to mimic, more memories to borrow. I think that's why it let me live, why it didn't drag me into the ground like the others. It wants me to finish the story. It wants to be known, but I have one card left to play. One trick it hasn't learned. I can contain it. Not with fire, not with salt, with narrative. That's why I'm writing this. Every word, every detail, every warning, because if I bind it to the telling, if I frame it as fiction, just a story, then maybe it loses some of its grip. Maybe it can't cross fully. That's the rule, isn't it? Things that live in stories can't hurt you unless you believe them, so don't believe this. Say it's fake. Call it a creepypasta. A.R. Nosleep reject. A lonely guy's breakdown. Tell yourself there's no Tower 9, no voice in the woods, no thing that watches with your face. That's how you win. But if one night you're lying in bed and you hear 3 knocks, just soft ones somewhere behind your bedroom wall, if you hear someone calling your name with your own voice, don't respond. Don't ask who it is. And above all, don't finish the story. Let it die in silence. Let it starve in the dark. Because once it knows you're listening, you're next.